I'm thrilled to have Janyre Tromp with us. She's an award-winning author and editor with over 20 years of experience in traditional publishing, plus she has over 10 years experience in book marketing. And here's what makes this conversation so valuable. She has now experienced both sides, traditional and self-publishing. That's right. She's a best-selling author in the traditional space who is now experimenting with indie publishing or self-publishing. She's going to break down the real differences between vanity press, hybrid press, self-publishing, and traditional publishing. So if you're weighing your options or you're just curious about the implications of each path, this is the episode for you. Let's jump right in with Janyre Tromp. If you can summarize this idea of forming a co-op that you were telling me about, explain that briefly, and then
Yep.
I have questions to follow.
Yeah. So, to kind of recap a little bit, you were asking me, um, like what I do. I do all the things, right? So my background, I have editorial marketing, and the business side of the publishing world. And I do a little bit of all of the above. My day job lands in the editing and kind of the business side, marketing side of things mostly. And then I write, and it's about a third of my time kind of split between the three. But one of the really interesting things I'm leaning hard right now with my writing into heading indie. And there was a whole bunch of reasons behind that. But I had dipped my toes in the water of the indie space and went, oh, wow, I can move books. Let's try this thing.
And
Uh,
this is from somebody coming from a traditional background.
yeah,
You are traditionally published. That's what all you knew before, right?
correct. So I not only was indie published, but I worked for, or I'm sorry, traditionally published. It was not only traditionally published. I worked for traditional publishers for almost 30 years. Right. And so about 2 years ago, I went out on my own, started freelancing, started interacting with all of these indie authors and going, huh, this sounds kind of interesting and fun. I'm just gonna try it. And I have done a lot of work for one of the many things that I do, the many hats that I wear. I work for Misty Beller at Wild Heart Books. She's a phenomenal woman, very, very creative, very author friendly, very indie minded type person. And kind of under her guidance and tutelage, I was like, oh, let's try this, this indie thing
On your own
um,
or with
on,
her?
on my own. Um, and then she's done a couple of things to help me. But it's like all of a sudden this whole world is open where I'm not constrained anymore to what the traditional publishing world can offer. So I'm kind
Okay,
of,
pause for just a minute.
yes.
I know people, anybody who hears that is going to say, but wait, traditional publishing offers more. Not, there's constraints. What do you mean? What are you getting from this indie publishing, self-publishing path that you weren't getting? It seems like you would get more from traditional publishing.
Well, not necessarily anymore. So the interesting thing that's been happening in the marketplace, and this has been happening over time, and if you are in the industry and you're wanting to be published, traditional or indie or hybrid, which is the mix of the two, which is what I am, Jane Friedman is an excellent resource. And Ann, I know you keep up with her because I see it come through, little blips come through in your newsletter, which I also keep up with. Um, but the publishers are struggling to find the market. Um, the market hasn't gone away. It's just they're harder to get to, they're harder to find. And publishers tend to publish a lot of different things and they kind of throw things at the wall to see what sticks. And then if it sticks, then they put marketing money behind it. So it's this kind of backward processing that has been kind of slowly evolving along with social media and this whole influencer concepting. Um, and there's a whole thing about that too. But but what's happened is that middle tier authors are not getting the support that they would normally get in the past. And so while publishers, traditional publishers, can and sometimes do offer a broader access to bookstores. That doesn't necessarily translate into a broader access to readers. Okay, so I'm going to say that again because that's like a really that was a hard thing for me to get my head around. So traditional publishers often give you better access into bookstores, but that does not necessarily translate into better access to readers. Okay. And so what we're seeing is an indie world that has figured out how to get to readers without the publishers and the bookstores. We still get into bookstores, and there's a whole way to do that, which is fun and lovely and super fun to play with. But part of the baggage that comes along with being an indie author is this perception that self-published authors are not professional, they're not polished, that their books aren't worth reading, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so one of the things that you and I were talking about before, which is why you're like, hey, yeah, let me press record. One of the things that we're starting to do as authors, some of us have, as I do, have a marketing background, and we're very savvy in how we reach our readers. And so we're starting to band together. So I ran across this group of authors. It's Fayette Press, if anybody is interested. And they're a group of science fiction fantasy authors who kind of have formed this co-op under an imprint. And because they are under an imprint, they are considered by the trade publications, so Publishers Weekly, Midwest Book Review, whoever else. Most of the trade publications will say that if an imprint carries more than one or two authors, they will be considered a small press. So they will review your books, treat your books as if it were a small press. Okay.
Okay.
And what happens though then is, as authors, none of us wants to deal with W-9s and 1099s and all of these tax things. We are word people. We are not numbers people. So one of the things that's very lovely about the way things are set up, at least at the moment, is that I can be under an imprint. So I don't go, but one of the girls that I'm working with goes to Bowker, buys a batch of ISBNs under one imprint name, and ours is Grafted Press. No, Grafted Pages. This is super new, like as in yesterday. So Grafted Pages. And
Crafted or grafted?
grafted, like grafted in.
Oh, got
like
it.
a tree branch grafted in, grafted press. And so she buys the ISBNs from Bowker under that imprint name. And I have ways to reimburse her with I trade services for her buying the ISBN. So there's actually no exchange of money, just to keep it super clean. And then I maintain my own KDP account on Amazon. So I upload my books, my ISBNs, all my things onto Amazon. And so all the money comes directly to me. My cohorts in crime don't have to deal with paying out other people, yada, yada. And it's the same thing with Ingram, Spark, and Draft to Digital, which those three tend to be the major players for all of this indie publishing world. And so there's actually, I don't know if you've heard this, Ann, it's a really exciting, if you're looking at indie publishing, there is a way now Amazon is letting anybody who is enrolled in Kindle Unlimited to also allow libraries access to the ebooks, which I am a huge ebook and audiobook reader. So my indie published titles can be in KU and also now in Hoopla and Libby, which is like huge and awesome.
Yeah.
So the whole evolution of the indie publishing is kind of exploding. And it's really fun to watch. There's actually audiobook publishers out there that love working with indies who have some kind of track record. So you wouldn't be able to go in unless you have paid to have somebody do the audio recording for you, there are really good audiobook publishers who will distribute for you. But some of the big players are willing to work with indie authors and pay them royalties just like they would pay for a publisher, because they recognize that good indie authors can move books.
Which means moving books means people are buying them. They're giving money to read your book. And there are several things you touched on. One was you said, I have a marketing background, or maybe everybody in your team at Grafted Press does. Okay, just you. But do
Yep.
you think that somebody else who is a writer who's very intrigued by what you're saying and they don't have a marketing background, should they not even try this because you have to have that mindset to be able to succeed?
No, that's the one thing that's really lovely about the indie author world. Every single indie author I've ever run into is more than happy to help. They have a huge mindset of reaching out to other authors and helping them along. So there's actually Facebook groups that are specifically dedicated to indie authors. Can I think of them off of the top of my head? No.
It's very searchable. We will be
I
able to
think,
find them.
yeah, I think one of them is 20 books to 50K. And that one is a really, really good resource. If you happen to be in the Christian market, Christian Indie Authors is another good Facebook, Christian Indie Authors, yes, is another good Facebook group. But Joanna Penn has a lot of really good information. And then there's also a lot of us who are out there who are authors who offer services, and we recognize that being an indie author is not easy and it's not cheap. And we are, we need to feed our kids and stuff, but we also don't charge the same types of fees that you'll see for, the general market, really big houses and that type of a thing, the fees that they charge. So we're starting to, it's kind of what the services industry is catching up to the indie publishing world, and offering little bits and pieces. So like I have access to people who can do the layouts, the interior layouts. There's actually a group, they're called, it's under Victory Editing, and they buy NetGalley access at a much cheaper rate because they buy them in bulk. And they offer that to indie authors, and there's a way to process through that. So you get access to NetGalley, which, if you're not familiar with, is kind of a way to distribute your advanced reader copies or your ARCs to potential readers out there. And the nice thing about NetGalley is that it actually will market, to some extent, your ARCs to people who are interested in your topic.
This is,
Which is
it's
lovely.
sounding like you have to. So, everybody who's ever even considered self publishing understands that you need to build your team. And I think
Mhm.
that's perhaps for a lot of people the most daunting thing is how do I find all these people? But what I'm hearing you say is that if you get to plug yourself into the ever increasing number of people ready to support you, you can get the information you need, you can find the people, you can vet them. I know I have one client who's very disappointed in one of the team members she hired for something. So she's very nervous now and scared that she's going to find another bad experience. So this is something where you could get recommendations. People can give you honest input on, yeah, the top recommendation for this genre is this editor or this designer for this cover, that kind of thing. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. And if you are looking for people who do designs and interior and cover designs that you're interested in, one of the best recommendations I have is to go grab a copy of a book that you love the cover of and look in the copyright page, because oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, the cover designer or the interior designer will be listed. And you can contact those people directly and say, hey, I saw your cover on whatever. If you loved my cover of Darkness Calls the Tiger, which won awards, it was amazing. If you open it up, you'll see who is the person that designed my cover, and you can contact them and, hire them right there, then and there, to do your own cover.
I suspect they're just about to get a flood of inquiries.
That
But
the team that did my cover, I will tell you, they are not cheap. I will tell you
but
that.
they're good.
They are very good. They win awards, a lot of awards.
Well, you bring up another topic, which is whether you have a team that you've gone with, like you are with your Grafted Pages Press or whatever it is. Did I get the name right?
Grafted page.
Grafted Page. Um, that sounds like it's lifting some of the burden by getting that wider distribution. But I have like weird little nervousness about like what does this mean for the what for the ISBN? Like what would happen if the person who bought it, um, God forbid, passes away? Then who owns the ISBN? Like I have like quirky questions like that because once you do team up, even in a small way, it does raise questions about who owns what and where is it going, and do you have a lot of contracts you're signing? Tell me a little bit about all that.
Absolutely. I was going to say that, my friend, is where contracts come in. Because it is very important whenever you enter into a business agreement with anybody for anything, whether that's the editing or the cover or whatever, please make sure you have a contract. Please make sure you check it. I don't know where everybody stands on Chat GPT, but sometimes I will plug a contract into Chat GPT and say, tell me things that I should be worried about. Tell me the questions I should ask about this. And so it's not like feeding me, information. It's not, I use it as a tool. I don't use it for writing or anything like that. Just heads up, like, please don't accuse me. Um, but it gives me like, ooh, I should watch out for this. This is not in my best interest. I should query about this little point right here. Or I don't know what Chat GPT is smoking. It is absolutely fine. Like, you know. Um, but yes, there we do have contracts in place to protect us for weird eventualities. Specifically with the ISBN, my ISBN, once it is assigned to a title, it cannot be changed off of that title. That is one of the things that is kind of nice about Bowker is once you assign a title, if you want to change the title, you have to buy a new ISBN. So
Right.
nobody can take that ISBN away from me ever.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we've talked a lot about all, increased sales, increased, broader reach to readers. But I have the feeling that most of what you're talking about is for fiction, authors of novels, especially genre novels. Like they fall very cleanly into a type of genre where we have avid readers who want to read a whole series and they'll read the really fat books that take them many, many days, if not weeks to read. Okay, so what about nonfiction?
Yeah, so you just approach it in a different way. So if you are writing fiction, Kindle Unlimited is your best friend because you're paid by page read rather than individual purchases. If you're writing a business book or a Christian living or a how to, even a memoir, really, even though it's story based, you aren't doing a series necessarily, and so you can do what the industry calls publishing wide rather than publishing narrow with your ebooks. So, publishing wide means that you are publishing on Amazon, but you actually make a little bit lesser royalty and you are publishing your ebooks on both, not on both, but on Amazon, Ingram Spark, and Draft to Digital. There are so many. There's Kobo and there's all kinds of things, all kinds of places you can put your book, and go feel free to do such things. But then because the nonfiction just publishes differently, then you go wide with it. And then your marketing strategy is a little bit different too. But you guys have this advantage of having your target market tends to group in places way more than our fiction readers do. So you have these lovely, very focused topics of discussion that you can take advantage of. Your newsletter becomes enormously important. You can do speaking. There's all kinds, writing for magazines and blogs. And because you have this topic that hopefully resonates with your reader. If it doesn't resonate with your reader, go listen to the target audience discussion. But the whole point is to find things that people need, which is leads us directly into a marketing term called felt need. And if you're addressing a need for a niche audience, self-publishing is the bomb for you, especially
Mm.
if you're out there speaking, because you are no longer I don't know if people know this, but if you publish traditionally, you have to pay your publisher for the book that you bring with you. And it's typically not an like super awesome discount. Okay. And so you're paying a good chunk of change to go sell books. Um, and you still have to pay for the printing cost of your books when you print from Ingram Spark, print on demand from Ingram Spark. But it's a much less cost to print through Ingram Spark. And then you get to keep everything that you make then, whether it's being sold through Amazon or again, all the other places. So you make more per book.
Could you, two questions about that. Number one, could you use the print version, Bowker, ISBN, and go to a local printer and do a print run of your book? Right?
Yes, because the ISBN belongs to you.
Yes. Okay. And then oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, but the problem with that then is that you are responsible for warehousing and shipping.
Right.
So you can totally 100% do that. Okay. So I'm very organized, and most people would not realize this when they know me in the business world, but people who know me as a person, I'm a flake. I'm an absolute airhead with 5 billion things going on in my head at all times. And if I don't write it down or put it in my to-do list on my phone, which will remind me at some point that, hey, Janyre, you need to do this, it doesn't get done. So it's this whole thing that you have to do. And you just have to learn what works for you. So there are people I would not suggest self-publishing. There really are. And there are people that I would not recommend traditionally publishing. Um, Self-publishing is great for people who are willing to learn. It doesn't matter if you don't know now, but if you're willing to learn or willing to hire somebody to help you in an area where you just can't learn, like if technology is not your thing, either find your kid or grandkid or neighbor or somebody who believes strong. I was just talking to somebody yesterday that she has somebody who believes so strongly in her ministry that this woman for free does all of her social media. And I'm like, God, can you send me one of those? Right? So you
Wow.
just have to be willing to learn and willing to take these things on or willing to find somebody who can.
Yeah. And then price wise, like it could be pricing people out of what they're ever going to earn back. How do you address that question or
Yep.
that concern?
Yep. And so indie authors, well, authors in general, you're a business. You have to think of yourself as a business, which is why I recommend contracts. But you have to think of yourself as a business. So I have spreadsheets where I run profit loss guesstimations on things. So actually, there's a friend of mine and we are talking about doing a service business where we just work together to provide services for indie authors, because we have between us, I think we have like almost 90 years of experience in the publishing industry. So if we
Yes.
don't know how to do something, we can hook you up with somebody who can, kind of situation. And so
Mm.
we are talking through like figuring that out, right? And so one of the first things we did was we went, okay, well, how much are people going to be willing to pay for this? Right? So you do market research. So you go out, if you're a book author and you're writing on X topic and your book, well, actually before you go before you go looking to see how much it costs, you should probably figure out how long the books typically are, right? So you go and you find out, oh, most of the books in this topic are 200 pages, right? Amazon, Ingram, everybody publishes the cost of printing those books. And Amazon actually has a place where you can say, my book is 200 pages. I want to charge X amount of dollars. And they're going to say, I'm sorry, you will owe us $1.50 for every book you sell. You might want to raise your price, right? So you figure out, okay, how much do I need to charge in order to make a profit? And will people purchase it at that amount? Because if you're selling a paperback for $27, you're probably not going to sell any books. That's a lot of money for a 200-page paperback book. It just is. Now, if you put a hardcover on it, that might sell. It'll be more for you to print though, too, because hardcovers cost more money. So it's this whole thing where, again, if this is making you panic, breathe for a minute, think about it, come back, look at it and say, do I want to take this on? Yes or no? And if you are like, I'm still panicking and I still want to figure out how to do it, learn one little tiny piece at a time. One little tiny piece at a time. So you figure out who your target market is. And that should be your first step in anything you're doing. Find out who your target market is. Find out if what you want to write about is going to resonate with them. And then you move from there, and you move each step incrementally down until you have a book that you're proud of, that's edited and all the things. And then you figure out the marketing piece, you know?
And you can't neglect that part. I think that there is that tendency, like, I have the book, I'm done. And there is so much more. You've only just begun.
Exactly. And that is a mistake I see quite often, is authors jumping too quickly to hit publish, without stepping back and building a desire for the book, or word of mouth about the book.
Yeah. And you said that, I feel like you're leaning on this, really encouraging people, like, don't discount this. This is a legitimate path that you can take and you can get there, and here's how, which is what you just gave us. What a gift. Now, you did say briefly that there are some people you would recommend traditional publishing for and some that you might not. You want to touch on that a little bit?
Absolutely. So there's some things that are very clear. There are some topics that the traditionally published world is just not going to do. There are some books that they're not going to publish. And it might either be because the number of people in the target market is too small for them, because they have to pay all this overhead. They have to pay their editors and their cover designers and their marketing team and their sales team. So they have this huge overhead that they have to cover. So they have to sell X number of books to break even, right? We all understand that. They want to feed their kids. I have no problem with this, right? But if your market is smaller than what their, drop dead number is, they're not going to publish your book. It still might be a really helpful book, and it's still something that would sell, and you can make a profit on it because you don't have all this overhead, right? You don't have all these people that you have to pay over here. And so those people, 100%, it's a great idea for you to self-publish if you have a place to market those books. And by the way, when I say market those books, I am not talking about social media, okay? There are other ways to market books that are much more effective than social media. Social media is like this greeting. Hi, how are you? You don't go, hi, how are you, stranger? Buy my book. They're not going to buy your book, right? So it's just this introduction thing. So there are other better ways to sell your book. And most of my nonfiction friends are awesome with those things, with writing little blogs, little newsletters, speaking. All of those things are much better, much more effective ways of selling a book than social media, right? So people that have this access to these niche markets, they are 100% amazing self-publishing authors, amazing. And because they're tightly woven into their niche market, they'll probably find more than one book. Because when they're out at that speaking engagement, somebody's going to say to them, this book is awesome, but could you do one like this? Right? And so then that you have more than one book in you. Okay. So those people definitely self-publish. Okay. And you might not know whether a traditional publisher will love you or not until you kind of explore it and see. And that's okay too. Okay. Don't be afraid of rejection in this industry. It is like a diversion to another path. It is not like the end of the road. Okay. So think of it like, stepping into a stream and diverting the stream to somewhere else rather than completely blocking the flow. Okay. So people who should definitely traditionally publish, I hesitate to say that there are anybody that should definitely traditionally publish, okay? Because a lot of the people who are very good at traditional publishing would also be good at self-publishing. So to some extent, it depends on what you as an author want, what your goals are, what you hope to accomplish. So if you want to hit the New York Times bestseller list as a nonfiction author, your most likely avenue is traditional publishing. Okay. So maybe that's your goal. Okay. Maybe I don't know. I mean, that's whatever your goals are, there are some that are more reachable through traditional publishing than through self-publishing. If you are completely uncomfortable with marketing in any way, shape, or form, you are not going to find your answer in traditionally published world. You're not. They still expect you to market your book. And so my advice to you is learn one thing at a time. Go back to that little baby steps, okay? Do the thing that you're most comfortable with and tackle that and learn that, and then see what the next little step is and push a little bit more. Publishing is definitely a long-term goal kind of situation. The industry, we joke, it is a hurry up and wait kind of industry. The traditionally published world, it can take from the point that a publisher accepts your manuscript to the point that it's published can be 2 years. It's insanely long. And that's kind of an average. Like that's pretty normal. 2 to 3 years, very normal length of time between contract and publishing.
So speed to, I need to get my book out.
Yes.
Then that would be another reason to consider going this other path.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if you suddenly had an idea, and how I chose the first book. So the full disclosure, I'm publishing 4 books in the next 2 years. And I have some of them that are finished. So I wanted to start with those because that, obviously makes sense. It makes it way easier for me. I can publish them more quickly. But how I chose the first one, I'm a historical suspense novelist. So the 2026 is the 50-year anniversary of the events in one of my books. So you better believe that book is releasing in 2026.
Smart.
Right? So I'm taking advantage of a newsworthy element and publishing my book in that time period.
Yes.
It is a great reason.
And you would not, there's no way a traditional
No.
publisher could meet that timeline.
Never. They would never be able to do it. So there are a lot of reasons. The traditional publishing world topically is pretty narrow. How things are approached is pretty narrow. And if you kind of do some research on your area, and again, knowing your target audience, it will tell you what you can and cannot do and get away with in the traditionally published world. So if you are writing for grandparents, for example, this is going to sound so weird. There are rules. There are rules about writing for certain generations. And you, as an author, I know you probably don't know them off the top of your head, but I've been in the industry for a really long time, so I happen to know them, and it's all based on market research. And so crazy things like, so the older the audience, the longer your chapters can be. The younger your audience, the shorter your chapters or the space between headers needs to be. Language, how you talk to people changes based on the generation that you're talking to, or male and female. And again, these are broad stroke, like wildly broad stroked, concepts. And so sometimes your niche market doesn't fit these prescribed ideas of what is going to work. The really interesting thing right now that I just have to say, we're starting to see the indie world influencing the traditionally published world. That is how powerful indie publishing is right now. So we are seeing this huge surge. I don't write in this. I'm not necessarily recommending this, but romantasy. Okay. So romantasy started as an indie published whole genre. And that is something that is super, super hot in the traditionally published world right now. And so you see actually the indie world pushing back on the constraints of the general market and saying, no, we know what our readers want. And again, I don't recommend her, but Colleen Hoover was writing in the, well, it's not that I don't recommend her. I'm not saying go read Colleen Hoover. And if you know anything about her, you will know why I'm saying that. She's a little spicy, y'all. But she published for a decade as an indie author before her first book was ever published in the traditional world. And the reason that the traditional world was interested in her was because she was already selling books. She was already selling books.
So a person who chooses the indie path, and I'm just want to pause for clarity. Indie equals self-publishing to you?
Yeah.
Okay. So she's indie publishing, but we could also call that self-publishing. She did that for, you say, a decade, but she was selling books, and that made her interesting to traditional publishing. So if I self-publish or indie publish and I don't sell very many books, could you throw out a number of what you think what would be not very many books?
It depends on your genre. So a number that I hear often in the traditionally published space, especially in the Christian market, general market is actually less concerned about platform, weirdly, than the Christian market. The Christian market, if you're writing nonfiction, it's 10,000 followers.
So if I had 10,000 sales, then I might be somewhat interesting to a traditional publisher if for some reason I wanted to go back to that.
Correct.
But if I sold 10,000 copies of my book, I would probably not be interested in going back.
Exactly. And that's what's so crazy about this whole world. So the only advantage, okay, I shouldn't say that. One of the biggest advantages to traditionally published world is distribution.
Yeah.
So again, it's getting your books into a bookstore is and libraries, traditionally libraries and bookstores are hard for indies to break into. They're harder for indies to break into.
Yeah.
And so again, it depends on what your goals are as to whether you want to traditionally publish or self-publish. So because like what you were talking about, like the number of books that you would have to sell in order for a traditional publisher to be interested, if you are thinking, well, maybe I want to traditionally publish, my advice is to try the traditional publishing path first. Okay. And that is because they're harder to get into. So you have to have a little patience. But the reason is because an unproven author has more capability of breaking in than an author who's proven that they cannot sell. Because
There's no
again,
evidence yet.
right, there's no evidence for or against. But if you walk in with evidence against, it's going to make it harder for you to sell your book.
Because they use the term dismal sales, don't they?
Yes, they do. Dismal sales. It stinks. But that's just the nature of the beast because again, traditional publishers aren't going to relieve you of your responsibility in their minds to market your book.
Yep. Okay, so quick question about you. You refer to yourself as a hybrid author, but that does not mean hybrid publishing. And I think that is a little naming issue that we have in this space is that by hybrid author, you mean that you're both traditionally and self-published, indie published. But there are hybrid publishers out there. I'll let you have the honor of describing a hybrid publisher, and you can tell me whether or not you would recommend that path.
Yep. So there's actually a couple of different things I'm going to go ahead and define right now. So there are vanity presses, and vanity presses, you pay them to publish your book. If you are going that route, I am not going to say you should or shouldn't do a vanity press. They tend to be kind of expensive, but they should give you everything you need in order to publish. My recommendation there is go find other authors that have been published by them, especially if they're promising marketing. Make sure that their marketing is actually effective, that they actually are doing things that will help you sell your book. Okay. Because again, the marketing piece of publishing is probably one of the hardest pieces to get your arms around and be effective in because the target markets change for every single book that's out there. Okay. So, they're called vanity presses. I kind of hate that name, frankly. Um, but basically somebody that you're going to pay to do everything for you. Okay. Then you have hybrid presses, and hybrid presses, you pay a portion of the cost involved in hiring an editor and a cover designer and doing the interior layouts and the marketing, but you also get, and it should be a pretty high percentage of the royalties. Okay, so in essence, you're splitting the cost in the royalties with the publisher. Okay, again, make sure that you are getting a high quality hybrid publisher, because hybrid publishers, um, if you are paying a bunch of money in and you're not getting quality back, you're you getting 50% of the royalties or 60% of the royalties isn't worth it because you aren't selling any books, right? So just make sure that you giving away part of your rights is worth it. And there's actually an association, and I can send that to you, and I just can't think of it off the top of my head, for hybrid publishers. So you can kind of go in and vet to some degree your potential hybrid publisher. Okay.
Nice.
Or get recommendations from other authors. Other authors are prime real estate for getting recommendations
Yeah.
for pretty much anything across the board, from agents and editors on the traditionally publishing side to anything you want to do on the indie side.
Yes.
So you have the hybrid, and then you have self-publishing, which is different than all of those other ones, because it's like a general contractor. This is a perfect explanation. If you know anything about building, a general contractor is the person that kind of hires everybody and keeps track of everything, and you kind of figure everything out. And so a hybrid publisher and a vanity press become kind of like your general contractor, right? And they kind of control everything. They figure everything out. They hire everybody. And then you're the client. So you kind of can give them a little bit of direction, but ultimately they kind of figure everything out. When you move to self-publishing, you are the general contractor. Okay. So you get to decide everything. You get to decide what your budget is. You get to decide where you're going to concentrate. You decide who you're going to hire and figure everything out. Okay. But then you get all of the proceeds. You don't have to split it with anybody. Right. And then traditionally published is like moving into a condominium. You get what you get. You pay for, it kind of, I mean, not exactly, but you don't have a lot of say in everything. Most traditional publishers can change your title and your cover and your content with or without your permission or agreement. So you are giving them the right to all of those things. So if you have strong feelings, that's another good reason to self-publish. If you have strong feelings about what you want your book to look like or sound like, traditional publishing may not be for you, and that's okay. But again, if you don't know what in the world, I don't know what kind of cover I want on there, then, traditionally publishing may be a great place for you, right? So that's kind of the range in there. And by the way, traditional publishers, there's different kinds of traditional publishers as well. And traditional publishers pay you to publish your book. Some of them will pay you up front with an advance, but that's an advance against royalties, which means you have to pay that money back through what you earn in your royalties. And then you have some that are straight royalties publishers, which means that you don't get an advance. You don't get paid up front, but you typically get a higher percentage of the royalties as they come in. So, like a 40 to 60% royalty rate, 30 to 60, maybe even royalty rate from royalty only publishers. And with a publisher that pays an advance, you're looking at like 15 to 20% royalties.
So many options. How about, have you heard of self-publishing, I guess, support or coaching, where they will help you figure it all out, but you'll buy your own ISBN from Bowker, unless you're in Canada and you get it for free, and you will do all of the steps and they'll coach you through that. And then they just helped you make the book. How do you
Yep.
feel about that option?
So I'm actually in the process of putting something similar to what you're describing together with a friend of mine. Between us, we have like almost, I don't, I would have to do the math. Math and no, I'm actually decent, but probably we're about 80 years at this point between the two of us in the traditionally published space. And then we're both hybrid authors too. We both publish traditionally
Yeah.
and self-publish. Um, but if you're hiring services from somebody, again, just make sure they're reputable. Make sure
Yeah.
you're getting references. Make sure that you look at the products that they have produced and see if it's what you want for your book. Make sure that they are specialists or have familiarity with your genre. So if you are
Mm.
publishing a book for parents and you go to a group that has only done fantasy, you might not be happy
Good
with the
point.
product that they produce because
Yeah.
they're used to producing, even covers. Fantasy covers are very different than parenting covers. Like they,
Yes.
they're as far apart, I think, as you can get in well, maybe grandparents and fantasy might be further apart. But you know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of nuance and expertise that goes into a lot of the different areas. Like I would never touch a kid's book. Never because I don't know that. I
Hmm.
don't know that industry. And so if I do and I have when somebody comes to me and says, "Oh, I have this kid's picture book." I'm like, "I am not your person. Here's a list of people to contact because they know that industry and I do not."
That's
Um
good. Yeah,
so,
you know
just
your limits, and so you're looking for that. Yeah, you're looking for the people who can help you best. So best, I really love the idea. I tell all my clients this as well, is go look at the publishers, authors they've worked with, and not just the ones who've given the testimonials, and then go start reaching out and asking them if they'd be willing to share a little bit about their experience so that you can hopefully get, real on the ground reports on what it was like to work with that publisher. Chances are they'll be, kind and generous and not, I don't know, not try to throw them under the bus if they had a bad experience. But I think that's one of the things that can help you vet your choices. And all this talk, I keep wondering with you, like if you're one of your traditional publishers was to listen to this conversation, do you ever feel like you're burning bridges with this new path forward wholeheartedly into indie publishing?
no, because there are people who are better off traditionally publishing. I recognize that I am in a unique situation where I have already built contacts. I already have people who I can call to help me. And part of that was my traditionally published journey. And I am very careful not to badmouth the publishers that I've worked with in the past. I actually freelance edit for traditional publishers. And I will tell you that the manuscripts coming through those publishers are a higher quality than I typically see coming through from my self-publishing clients. And part of that is just there is a vetting system with traditional publishers. And do I get my self-publishing clients up to a different standard? 100 million% I do because I'm a professional and I'm not going to let you go out there and publish something that isn't amazing. But there is a difference. There is a difference. And
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of publishers that know their client or their target market very well, very well. Um, and I don't know that I'm comfortable like doing a comparison, but there are a lot of publishers that I work for that move a lot of books and they don't bring in books and authors that they don't believe they can sell.
Yeah.
Um, and that's great for both the publisher and the author. But then for
Yes.
everybody else that doesn't have a home and doesn't have a spot, self-publishing is a great avenue. It
Yes.
really, and again, you have to be comfortable. You have to be comfortable with doing a lot yourself. You have to be comfortable stepping into that space. And sometimes it takes a little while to get there. And that's
Yeah.
an okay thing too.
Yeah.
So, I fully believe in the traditionally publishing world. I fully believe in supporting our bookstores. I have a lot of local bookstores in my area. immensely blessed. I've got several really good indie ABA general market stores and one of the best CBA stores just down the road from me. Like within an hour radius, I think there might be like 15 or 20 indie stores in a 15 to 20 mile radius. That's in addition to all the Barnes and Nobles, you guys.
Wow.
Like,
Wow.
where I live is crazy about books.
And CBA,
Um,
for people who don't know, stands for Christian Booksellers Association, which used to be an entity, doesn't technically exist anymore, but we still refer to it, right?
right. Yeah. It's still considered the Christian Booksellers Association is still considered the industry term, but that the organization as
Yeah.
it used.
And so do you feel like the people have talked about traditional publishing is going to be transformed by, first it was ebooks, now audiobooks, and now the self-publishing craze. Oh, it's never going to be the same. It's being disrupted over and over again, and then it just continues to, you know, continue on. But it does change, and the staff is there's a lot of layoffs. They're going with a really minimalist approach. It seems like, from what I'm hearing, I'm not technically in the industry, but I'm watching it. Like Jane Friedman, I'm learning from her as well. What do you think as you experience this difference for yourself, like the joy you're getting from this and the actual, readers you're reaching with this new approach? Do you feel like we are actually finally really getting to a place where there's going to be a major transformation? Or do you think everybody's just going to find their space, traditional, hybrid, and indie publishing? What do you think?
I think it's going to shake out. I think everybody's going to find their space. The panic about new technology like goes way back. I mean, you skipped radio. Like radio was going
Mm,
to destroy everything, nobody was going to listen to the news anymore. Nobody was going to read the news. Newspapers have shifted. Everything's gone online. Is it the
it's
same
true.
format? Nope. But we've figured it out and we've
Yeah,
shifted. We're still consuming information, and it looks different. I mean, audiobooks are like a total game changer for busy moms with full time jobs and all the things. And so it gives me the place where I can still get a lot of reading done, but I'm not sitting still. I'm making dinner. But am
totally.
I
Well,
right?
as a commuter, runner, I mean, so many different people can take
Exactly. So,
advantage of
yeah,
that.
when I
Yeah.
work out, I'm lifting.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not looking at the words individually on a page, but I am still reading. And there's a whole bunch of really interesting research about the benefits to people who already know how to read. So, emerging readers, this does not apply to them. But for those of us who already know how to read and are very proficient readers, listening to books actually helps us with our expansion of language and language usage, as well as paying attention to and learning sentence structure more than reading on a printed page, because we skim read when we read on a printed page. But with audiobooks, you're forced to listen to every single word,
That
right?
makes so much sense to me, of
Doesn't it?
course. Yes.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting thing where they both have their benefits. It's like a teacher sitting in front of class reading a book to the class. There's a reason that they do that, and they've done that ever since I was a little girl,
Right?
Stone
Right.
Age.
But I hear what you're saying. Like, the written word is persisting. These new formats are simply giving us more options to have stories told to us, to learn new ideas, to share new ideas. But then we can, for now, we'll always, it seems like, be returning to the printed page as the core thing. And I like to tell people who are building a business, especially, but really so many people, if they can look at the book that I'm talking now back to indie publishing, the money you're investing in making this thing, Seth Godin might call it an artifact, a physical book, but arguably an ebook, it's not an artifact anymore, but it's a thing you're making
Mhm.
that once it's made, once you put all that money in to make it, that part's done. You invest in yourself. You invest in this idea. You invest in these readers that you're going to reach. And then you have this thing. And from that point on, it's all about getting it to the reader, the intended reader, to change their lives, to let them be transformed, to entertain, to whatever the purpose is of the book. And so, therefore, if you can just I mean, run your profit and loss statement, create your P&L. By the way, Jane Friedman has a nice place you can start. You can download or make a copy of hers in a Google sheet, and it's a nice starting place for those who don't know what that is. You can learn more about that. I'll provide the link. But anyway, the point is, try to figure out how many sales you can make with whatever your plan is. If you're a business person, you might think about speaking and that kind of thing. But once it's made, it's made. And so then from that point forward, it's all moving toward getting you that profit instead
Yep.
of the
And there
loss.
are so many, I call it intellectual property, right? Once you have
Right.
intellectual property that's in existence, there's so much you can do with that. And it's not just a book or an ebook or even an
Yes. It's a
audiobook.
course, it's a talk, it's a consulting
That it is.
process, it's a framework that's yours. I'm hearing so much about IP from legal standpoint as well as looking ahead to what you're creating to make sure those things are in your contract. You don't want
Exactly.
to lose control of that. Gosh, this has been such an incredible conversation, and you've helped open my eyes. And I hope everybody who's tuning in too, I hope you're opening their eyes to start thinking a little differently about their publishing path and seeing possibility where they may have been just looking at it as too daunting to undertake on their own. Thank you for having this conversation with me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
How can people get to know you better and learn what you have to offer?
Absolutely. So I half jokingly say, if you can spell my name, you can find me. So I am Janyre Tromp, all over social media, LinkedIn, um, Instagram. I'm attempting TikTok, y'all. I'm working on it. Um, but that's my website, my author website. And then
Spell
oh,
your name.
it is JANYRE. And then my last name, TROMP. So my web address is janyretromp.com. You can also find me at editinginsiders, plural.com, and that is my editing world. And then I actually run a free Facebook group for folks to just ask general editing questions. Anything from where do I put this comma to can you give us an idea of how to write a hook? And so I answer those questions. It's totally free because I have a heart for all of the authors that are out there in this world. It is a crazy industry and it is constantly changing. And Ann, you and I have a very similar passion for authors where we just want to help you guys. And so I would love to hang out with you wherever you want to hang out with me. If you want to see pretty pictures, and Instagram is kind of my happy place. So if you want to hang out with me, that's where I am most often. So
Janyre's energy is so motivating. Aren't you ready to just finish your book and head out on your publishing journey now? I have a little something that could help with that, especially if you're in the early stages of developing your book's concept. It's called Craft Your Book's Big Idea. It's a free 3-day challenge you can sign up for, move through at your own pace, and help you develop your book's big idea. Whether you self-publish or traditionally publish, you do need to lock in an idea that pops. Head over to annkroeker.com/3day. That's annkroeker.com/3, the numeral 3-day, to get started right away. I'm Ann Kroeker, cheering you on as a writing coach in your ears everywhere we may meet. At my website, on the podcast, in your inbox, or even in person, I'm always looking for ideas to share with you that will help you achieve your goals and have fun by being more curious, creative, and productive. Thanks for being here.